Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello and welcome to Game Over Winnipeg. My name is Brendan Labarre, and the Winnipeg Jets lost 3-1 to the Dallas Stars for the last game of their 6-game road trip. Now, before the game, we have some comments going into the show, which is lovely. David W., I saw you on Ty's stream. Welcome back. He said, we're going to talk about how the offense for the Dallas Stars went cold, LOL. Yeah, you know what? That's on the agenda today a little bit. Go Local Sports Team says, are we still being nice to Logan? Well, we're going to try. It's real tough today after his 3 penalties. But before we talk about the game today, let's talk about the flagship show of the Game Over Network, Hyperdrive Hockey. It's all things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries. In their latest episode, they talked a lot about the PWHL, which started this past weekend. You know what? Kind of a not as covered a league. So make sure you're going to Hyperdrive Hockey to get your coverage for the PWHL there. Find it wherever your favorite podcasts are sold. They're not sold. It's free and easy to listen to. You got Max, you got Daphne, you got Kev. They got you covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts. And you know what? While we're looking for hockey kind of stuff, make sure you're liking and subscribing to Game Over Winnipeg. We recently passed over 100 subscribers. Thank you so much. That's all of you guys. And speaking of all of you guys, make sure you're liking, commenting, subscribing, putting stuff in chat throughout this whole game. This is my show as much as it is your show. So, getting started here today, the Winnipeg Jets at the end of a road trip, kind of tough to give them fault. They seemed a little sloppy, maybe soggy, whatever adjective you kind of want to say to describe their play tonight. They came out there and it was a real tough start. You know, they were trying to win battles. It seemed like when the game would speed up, they didn't have the wheels to keep up with the Dallas Stars. When the game slowed down and they were in fights along the boards, it seemed like the Dallas Stars just had a little extra gas in the tank, which is always kind of tough when you're on the end of a road trip. It seemed like every time not every time, but the Dallas Stars just had one more step to give in every aspect of the game. And as we kind of start, I think Go Local Sports Team just said, are we still being nice to Logan? And I think no one kind of encapsulated this more than Logan Stanley, who's just throwing the puck away, doing all these things, slapping the puck to the other guys. It just seemed like the Winnipeg Jets as a whole team were kind of looking past this game at the beginning, trying to get to this end of the road trip, trying to sleep in their own bed, which I'm sure we can all kind of attest to. And then funny things happened. You know, hockey as a game in itself is a game on a sheet of ice where you have knives on your shoes, you're using sticks. It's kind of silly if you break it down all the way. Because of that, sometimes even when you're out playing their team like the Dallas Stars were at the beginning, things don't go your way. And Adam Lowry, he gets the first goal, but it all starts with Nino Niederreiter. Nino Niederreiter, the forecheck has been so good this year. Nino Niederreiter, probably one of the most consistent Winnipeg Jets on the season, goes in on the forecheck, wins a battle, which is a rare thing for the Winnipeg Jets today, gets it back to the D to D, and Hayden Fleury said on the interview during the first and second period that on that play, he saw the lane to the net that was not there, and he just threw it at Adam Lowry's stick, which personally I thought he was passing to Nino Niederreiter, who was kind of past Adam Lowry, but he hits Adam Lowry on the stick, goes in the net, and is just a wonderful play, a very fortunate play, and a nice road kind of goal from the Jets captain. And from there, you know, we are on that high. We're like, okay, guys, we're in this, we're leading. Logan Stanley goes and slashes. I forget what Dallas Star it was when he kind of was on a breakaway. He beat Colin Miller, and then he goes and takes a breakaway. And Logan, I think it was Dadonov actually. Dadonov had a really good game today for the Dallas Stars. Speaking of Dadonov, if you know the reference, 2BC Productions, shout out. And then you could kind of go into this game. They had a nice little boost on the PK. One of the things I loved as a hockey player when you're on the PK is it gives you an excuse to go as fast as you can. And it's kind of nice when you're on, it's just a little bit more open ice. The turnovers are more of an aggressive kind of turn because you got the one defenseman at the top And when the puck turns over to the PK team, it's almost more of a uh-oh, because either you're gonna go back for the dump puck or they're gonna go and you have one defenseman back. And I think Erasmus Kapari was really good at like encapsulating, that's a $10 word, kind of manifesting what that meant when he got the puck, goes into a wonderful break. I don't believe he kind of got all the way, but it just showed how strong Erasmus Kapari is a penalty killer this year. He's good on faceoffs. He's got those great feet. Just a great game from the young Jets fourth line center. And then from the kind of PK there, you can kind of see after that, the Dallas Stars continued. They were boxing the Jets out. They were beating them with speed, and they kept on doing this one play where they would have a guy dart through the neutral zone, kind of to the middle of the opposing blue line. And they were trying to hit that guy with speed so he could break in almost on a breakaway. And they tried this so many times throughout the game, and I was kind of thinking that when I covered the Jets Stars game last time, we had the Dallas Stars. They kind of lost the game between the ringette line. If you're not sure where the ringette line is, because there's not one in the NHL, it's basically the top of the circles and the blue line. In that area where the defensemen usually hang out, the Winnipeg Jets would cause a bunch of turnovers, and they were able to create so much offense and so much defense from the opposing, section of the Dallas Stars zone to win the game. And in this game, it seemed like the Dallas Stars were trying to completely take that out of the equation by hitting the guy's speed at the far blue line and just taking the neutral zone out of the game. And that kind of was a common theme. And when we get to the third goal that Dallas scored, no, the second one by Mason Marchment, it really came into a play, and it really was something that the Dallas Stars were able to take advantage of. And then with the kind of game that was going on, we had a point where Johnston, Wyatt Johnston of the Dallas Stars scored a goal to tie up the game. And that goal just seemed like a bunch of lost battles from along the wall. Josh Morrissey coming back to Kyle Connor having to get down to the end, to it starting from Dylan DeMello kind of losing his footing at the offensive blue line, which is a little tough to see. And it made the Jets kind of look, it was almost a little goofy how when the Dallas Stars came down, they came on this like 2-on-1 with Kyle Connor. He was barely a 1. It was like, because he was on the back check. And when the Dallas Stars when Wyatt Johnston put the puck into the net, it was like all 4 Jets just came. It was like, in the NFL, when they kick the ball on the punt off, and then all the defensive players could just kind of keep running. That's kind of looked like what the Jets, they just kind of peeled back, and it was just, they're so out of gas after this road trip. And you kind of get it, but at the same time, you're like, we just need a little bit more out of you guys. And just a bunch of lost battles there. And then Logan Stanley took another penalty. That's it. That's what I have to say about that. But one good thing that came out of that penalty was you saw Morgan Barron, who beginning with the season, I wouldn't say he was playing bad, but he was definitely not the Morgan Barron we're used to seeing. But this was just a classic Morgan Barron play on the penalty kill. He gets the puck and he's using his body. He's driving his shoulder into Miro Heiskanen. He makes a move. He almost scores going to the backhand and tries to go top shelf there to make a save, but it's just him and Kapari this game. I don't know if it's because they're on the fourth line, they don't play as much as the other guys, but they seem to be the guys with the most legs, and I think Scott Arniel agreed, because it seemed like they were out there quite a bit. Going to the second period, Rupe Hintz starts the period with another breakaway. Beautiful save by Connor Hellebuck. It's just another one of those plays where the Dallas Stars are shooting the puck up the middle, hitting a guy with speed, and he just goes in for another breakaway. But then it was almost like the Jets were clawing back in it. And I know the shot clock isn't everything, but they're so far after the first period, and they start climbing. They start climbing back in. It was almost like they were making the Dallas Stars play as sloppy as they were forced to play with how fatigued they were. And as they were kind of clawing their way back in the game, they got into a bunch of penalty trouble, and you don't kind of blame them. Again, they're so fatigued. Fleury got one, and then right away, one of the people who should not be fatigued, they were injured before on the road trip, coming in, just loses the guy on the rush, as I understand he was trying to just kind of time it so that he was at the blue line. he was trying to, when Jason Robertson kind of peeled on, was going on the right side there. He wanted to kind of pinch him off at the blue line. I understand that, but Logan Stanley just loses Jason Robertson behind him and is forced to slash him. That's his third penalty. 3 strikes and you're out. He was starting to be benched for a little bit of the game. What are you going to do? And then Rupe Hintz takes a holding stick, and the refs were just out to lunch. Josh Morrissey loses his kind of composure a little bit, goes to whack a guy. And I mean, I have no problem with that, really. But like, the other team has Jamie Benn, man. Like, they're out there doing stuff like that every other shift. So I'm not sure where this one-sided kind of thing was going on. I don't want to say one-sided. It just felt like all this fatigue was coming in, and honestly, Josh Morrissey, that's a really tough penalty to take. Almost undisciplined. It was a pretty undisciplined. You know what was very undisciplined too is, I don't want to say undisciplined for this one, Scott Arniel goes nuts on the refs here. And I think, either way, whether you agree with him or not, whether you think that, penalty should be even, or if it should just be, you call everything that happens no matter what. Scott Arniel's doing this for his team so that the next time there's a 50-50 call, it goes the Jets' way. You kind of see this kind of stuff all the time where there's all these makeup calls and these things. And a part of that is you got to play the game. Scott Arniel is playing the game. He was going in there, making sure that when there's a next call, that his team would be getting it. And then, we go into the third. Things are kind of progressing. Logan Stanley seemingly benched. Colin Miller starts playing a lot with Josh Morrissey, and that might be they're trying to get that next goal type of thing. But it really felt like Logan Stanley was just being benched there. And speaking of Logan Stanley, Ty, my co-host here at Game Over Winnipeg, is saying Arniel's in the postgame that Stanley isn't going to get better from the press box, so he needs to keep playing. Woof. And you know what? I agree with that. He's not going to get better from the press box, but I would just like to see when he going to get better. He's 26. But that is for our second period. We're going to be talking about Logan Stanley in the second period. And then the second goal with Mason Marchment. Mason Marchment, the Dallas Stars get the puck in their own end. Mason Marchment sees that, goes for the play. The play we've been talking about this whole time. He runs up to the middle at the middle of the blue line, gets hit with the pass, goes in. It's a one-on-one Josh Morrissey. He turns his back to him to kind of box Morrissey out, protect the puck. He throws a backhander, and it just goes in. And say what you want. Maybe Hellbuck should have had that. Maybe it's not. The backhanders are tough. It was kind of through Morrissey's body as a screen. But at the end of the day, you have to score more than one goal if you want to win. And it didn't seem like the Jets were close to that tonight. And then kind of throughout the last half of the second period for the third period, it just felt like the Jets were holding on. There was another breakaway by Hintz, the same play. They've been doing it all night. Nothing new. And the Winnipeg Jets get an empty net, scored a goal on by Rupe Hintz, and the game was kind of over from there. Rupe Hintz, by the way, my cousin went to a Dallas Stars training camp when he was young. He had nothing but great things to say about Rupe Hintz. He thought he was like the best player he ever saw, which was kind of makes sense. He's very, very, very good. And it felt like throughout this whole game, the Winnipeg Jets were kind of on the back foot because of the Dallas Stars' speed. Those passes up to the opposing blue line from the Dallas Stars up to the Jets' blue line, that's something they really struggled with way back against Seattle. It was something that you kind of recognized as a Jets' strength, Jets' weakness. And even though they won that game against Seattle, it was something they needed to work on. They were really good at protecting against plays like that against Colorado when they played them mere weeks ago. And now it's just kind of creeping back in the game, but that's okay. That's what the regular season is for. And as they kind of get to the playoffs, as they kind of keep going with this ongoing season, hopefully they find ways to kind of get around that, especially when they are a little bit more rested. And now it's time for our second period. This is a reminder to like and subscribe. Make sure you're in the chat. Ty, my co-host Ty, is giving a shout out to David W in the chat. We love David W. He's a huge commenter on the Game Over Network. I saw him in a Game Over Vancouver chat, which was beautiful. And I'm here to remind you that the Game Over Network is an independent production focused on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode, it's right near the like and subscribe button, just down there. We have a link to our Patreon page. We are also working through LaRouque, which is a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec, just like Game Over, the Game Over Network. And we're aiming to raise $15,000. And if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government funding that will allow us to employ more people. So if you're like, man, why is it just Ty and Brendan? If you donate, maybe it could be you. Who knows? If you have any ideas for what you'd like to see as giveaways from these crowdfunding efforts, I personally really enjoy these mugs. Let us know in the comments on Twitter, Instagram, Discord server, probably on BlueSky too. The ad read doesn't say BlueSky. We have BlueSky. Get in there. And so, as we get into our second period here, I just want to talk about a couple of players on the Winnipeg Jets. I don't want to start with Logan Stanley. Let's start with Adam Lowry. Adam Lowry, that beautiful, beautiful man. I've been told he is very handsome by a lot of people. You know what? He is a handsome guy. He's lovely. But what a game he had. There was a time in getting the goal. He seemed like he was really trying to drag his team into the fight. I'd say like he probably had the best game. It was probably him. Of course, Hellebuck, but that's just Hellebuck. It's kind of a given. Kapari and Barron were probably the best Winnipeg Jets tonight. And I think with that, he's just so good at like leading his team into this fight. And I think one thing that was really good for him was getting a guy like Nino Niederreiter how long ago and just having that continued success with him from the beginning of last season. I remember they opened last training camp, not this training camp, but the one for the 23-24 season. And in that training camp, they were really trying to make the Ehlers, Perfetti, and Nino Niederreiter line work. But as soon as they put Nino with Lowry, it seemed like that was the click and that was the thing. And having a guy who's a bona fide middle six, probably a second liner, like a really solid, like he can't be the best player in the second line, but a really good second liner. He can probably be the worst player in the first line, as he was in Carolina. But with oh my gosh, I'm losing my words. But with Nino Niederreiter, it's kind of given Adam Lowry this extra kind of offensive touch. And if we look at Adam Lowry's stats from his kind of his career here. Oh, did I lose them? I think I did. Let's get them in on the stream here. I had them for just a moment. If you look at Adam Lowry's stats, oh, watch this. It's going to be huge. Boom. But if we look at Adam Lowry's stats here, one thing I criticized him for when he was with the Winnipeg Jets all this time and being a third line center is he didn't have that offensive push you need from a third line center. Now that was never going to be his kind of strength. I'm gonna shift over here. Look at this. That was never going to be his strength. But one thing you need from a third line center of this team, because you don't have that superstar, you don't have that Connor McDavid, that McKinnon, that Matthews, is you needed a little bit more offensive push from your third line center, especially the way that the Winnipeg Jets run their lines, where they kind of have more of a it's more of a 2A, 2B situation. If you're winning the game, the Lowry line plays more, or depending on the matchups they want to have, or if you're losing the game, you might play that Nikolai Ehlers line a little bit more just to get more offense. But the Adam Lowry line is definitely, I would not call them a third line. And if you look at Adam Lowry's career, it almost felt like those couple of years they were missing the playoffs, the Dave Lowry years, funny enough. It almost seemed like maybe we were giving too much ice time to this guy. He never had 30 points in a season, which seems like a prerequisite for a guy who plays as much as Adam Lowry does. Until, what was it? 22-23, which is crazy because that's like when he's turning 30. And you're like, okay, is that the peak of Adam Lowry? But it seems that Nino Niederreiter and him kind of unlocked this additional offense that he has. And you really enjoy that out of a guy like Adam Lowry because you saw tonight, he's kind of the engine of this team. As he goes, the Winnipeg Jets go. And there's been no one kind of really like that for a long time for this team. And you love to see him drag this team into the fight. You love to see him be so physical. And I think when I had those kind of criticisms of him being the third line center of this team, you never really saw him because it seemed like they were putting him with the what was his name? Not Kirby Reichel. You know who I'm talking about. Curtis Reichel? Something like that. Usually I'm really good at this trivia most of the time. Like the Zach Sanfords. Andrew Kopp was probably his other best line mate after Nino Niederreiter. But even a guy like Brandon Tanev didn't have the greatest offensive touch. But now that you're seeing him play with a guy like Nino Niederreiter, it's really unlocking that from Adam Lowry. And you love when this line starts. It really sets the tone. You almost want to see them out there after every single time. My dad's going to love this line. After every single time the other team scores, every time you score, you want this line out there to settle things down. And it all starts with this man, Adam Lowry. And he was, people talk about Mark Scheifele being the first Winnipeg Jets draft pick of all time. Adam Lowry was the second. He was the second pick after them. He wasn't their second round pick. They didn't have a second round pick that year, but they picked him in the third round. When he was 19, he won the WHL Forward of the Year. I believe he had 98 points that season. Usually that goes to a guy who is a little bit more prominent, maybe a first round pick, something like that. But this guy, just every step of the way, since he walked onto the team, the training camp of 2014, really hasn't looked back as the third line center. Such a huge part of this team. And it's just become so apparent that he's such a driver of what makes this team succeed. All right, and we're gonna take that down. That was fun, eh? Seeing that little showbiz going on the line. Some nice little graphics there that kind of tell the story here. But now we got to talk about Logan. Logan Stanley, drafted 5 years after Adam Lowry in 2016. He was also their second draft pick that year. That year they drafted Patrick Laine, second overall after winning the draft lottery. They had another second round pick. We have Josh here, my buddy Josh. The penalties were fairly top-sided in this game. Do you think the Jets should have gotten some more opportunities in the power play, especially after some weaker calls? Josh, I think in this game, the Winnipeg Jets just didn't have a lot of gas. I think there was like the hooking penalties, the stuff like that. There were some soft ones for sure. But I think when you're the slower team, when you're a little bit more sloppy, when you're a little bit more tired, you're just going to be reaching a little bit more. And that's just that just seemed to be how it went tonight, unfortunately. With Dallas, I think they definitely, if they tried, like there was one time in the third where Miller's holding his face because he was seemingly high sticked. Maybe he got a shoulder up high. I didn't really see what happened on the play, but there's always a lot more things you could probably call. But I think like the easy ones are always going to be those hooking in the hands when you take away a prime scoring chance, like Logan Stanley's first slashing penalty in the first period. And I think that just when you're trying to catch up, when you're trying to kind of catch guys on the back check, you're reaching in to take away a scoring opportunity, that's always going to be called more than just like the little rough stuff, the little kind of extra jabs and stuff like that. So Logan Stanley, they're definitely more slow. Do you think Logan Stanley should have been in the press box even with the Jets' defensive injuries? Well, let's get into it. I think with Logan Stanley, very on topic too. Should he have been in the press box? I think the Winnipeg Jets are after something very specific right now. But when I was looking at the lineup beforehand, it seemed like they were trying to get Dylan Collin in again. And I thought he played really good against Vegas. And it seems like they don't want to put him with Ville Heinola because they think he fulfills the same role. And that kind of makes sense if you're looking at it from purely a team building kind of stance, right? It's like, okay, they're both these like flashy, younger. Dylan Collin's like 25 though, 26, so he's not really that young. But they're puck moving guys, and against a team like Dallas, you're gonna want more of that physical side. You understand why they wouldn't want Ville Heinola and Dylan Collin in the game together. But when I saw they were putting Colin Miller back in, which I think is the right decision because Colin Miller has just been such a solid defenseman for them this year, you were like, okay, guys, we finally got Ville Heinola back. It seemed like we were going to be finally getting to see what Ville Heinola can do. And one thing that we saw from, we have more graphics. One thing we saw from, or one thing we heard, here's Mike McIntyre. He said, I'm on the road here in Dallas. And Scott O'Neill mentioned to me yesterday the need to manage Ville Heinola's playing time in the early stages of his return from injury after playing 4 games and 6 nights with the Moose and the Jets. I suspect that's a factor here. But I still feel like, okay. And then, who is it? Or is the only factor that Logan's big? That's funny. But even with that, you almost kind of think like, like, yeah, he's tired, but the whole team's tired, right? Like, why hasn't this been a factor with getting David Gustafsson in the lineup more? It's just seems that, I don't know, maybe they were trying to like, maybe they're trying to ease kind of Ville Heinola in, but Logan Stanley really cost them tonight. And I think, maybe we need to maybe have a little bit more trust in Ville, because even though he's played 4 games in 6 nights, that wouldn't stop you from playing like a better player. And I understand that's not apples to apples. And I think just like, if you want to get this guy in the rhythm, like, even if Ville Heinola is kind of maybe a little bit more tired, like, he didn't play any games before those 4 games. He's still a lot more rested than these guys who are playing game in, game out, skating every day. So I think maybe that might have been the call there. And I think hindsight's 20/20. And I understand the rationale, but I guess we'll see what the philosophy is going to the next game, or even if they take Hayden Fleury out. Because I think going to the season, if there weren't these injuries on D, if Heinola and Logan Stanley weren't hurt at the beginning, would Hayden Fleury be on the Jets? Would he be sent down? It kind of seems like, based on the organization chart, he seemed like he would have been the 5th left-handed defenseman after Morrissey, Sandberg, Heinola, and Stanley. But I guess, we'll never find out the answer to that question. But anyway, with Logan Stanley, he's that first-round draft pick that in 2016, they traded up to get him. They traded up a first and a second, an early second, by the way, to move up 4 or 5 spots. I think they had the 22nd pick. They went up to 18 to get Logan Stanley. And they were out there to get Logan Stanley specifically because they made that trade right before the pick. Josh says this isn't the first game we can say Logan Stanley cost him the game when all the Jets acknowledges like his liability. Well, it seems like ever since they traded up for Logan Stanley, Josh, they have been trying to do everything to be like, oh no, we were right. They give him all these spots. They let him in. They keep on giving him chance after chance after chance after chance. And they protected him in the expansion draft. People forget they exposed Dylan DeMello. And I think that was such a irrefusable poor asset management to be like, okay, you can have probably our second best defenseman. It's either him or Pionk, depending on the day. I think Pionk's definitely better this year. It seems like DeMello's dealing with something, but definitely the second best defenseman at the time for that Seattle draft. And they protect Logan Stanley. And now it all ended up okay. They didn't take Dylan DeMello, but does that excuse the action? That's up to you to say. I don't think so. And then another thing is that Logan Stanley giving him these chances time after time, it's made them lose other defensemen in the process. You think about guys like Ville Heinola, it's starting to look like it's going to be another one of these guys as that kind of played into today. You look at Declan Chisholm, who they lost to Minnesota, who's getting regular minutes, a different style of defenseman, sure, but a guy they lost. And I think the biggest loss so far, Jonathan Kovacevic, who played a lot of games for them, he played a few games for them, but he right now is enjoying so much more success in New Jersey right now. He was in Montreal and then was traded to New Jersey. So even if they would have gotten the asset for trading him, they lose the asset for nothing by losing him on waivers to have Logan Stanley in the lineup. And I don't think they're going to be acknowledging his liability anytime soon. And I'm trying to, on this show, be nicest player. I went on Game Over Toronto in their chat because they were talking some smack, and I got in there and I'm defending my boy. We're trying to be nice to Logan Stanley, and he's doing some okay things when he's trying to be really physical, because that's really all he's got to work with, unfortunately, it seems like. But when it comes to the hockey playing part, the Jets don't seem to realize, okay, maybe he shouldn't even be on the PK. Like, maybe he's just way too limited as an NHL player to be in these situations. And they're losing other guys. They're losing players. They're putting other players they're putting players on waivers because of him. They're having to make trades. And all while they might have lost Dylan DeMello. And they just keep on trying this thing we know is not going to work. He's not young. We're the same. Me and Logan Stanley are the same age. We're 26. Like, I go for a run, I'm sore for 2 days. Like, I'm not a young man anymore, and neither is he. I don't know how better he's going to get. Ty said earlier that he's not going to get better in the press box, just like He's reflecting what Scott O'Neill says. He hasn't gotten better on the ice either, unfortunately, and it sucks because it's like, but it's like, Jets. If you love him, you gotta let him go. It just feels like maybe he has a better chance earlier. And when I was on Game Over Ottawa the other day, and I was watching the Senators and Flames play. And on the Flames, I've been watching some Kevin Ball this season, who's been a 6'7" guy, been paired with Rasmus Anderson. And whatever Kevin Ball has been playing, he looks a lot better. He can skate a little bit better. I remember him playing on the World Junior team, and I was like, oh, this is another Logan Stanley. But can Logan Stanley kind of take some lessons from Kevin Ball to try and kind of transfer his game to a way where he's not a complete liability? I hope so. I hope he can kind of figure it out, because it's just not working right now. We're about to get into the third period. Thank you guys for chatting. Go Local Sports Team says he's just a boy. Logan Stanley is just a boy. We're trying to be real nice and fair to our boy. But as we get over, we're going to talk about Game on Winnipeg. Game on Winnipeg is a show that's coming. It's coming. Harrison Lee's the host. We're just kind of figuring out some stuff. We launched Game On for a bit. It didn't really work with the other markets. We reeled it back and we're like, hey, let's give the best show for the people. So we're putting it back in the oven, giving it a few more minutes to just kind of make sure it's right for you guys. So what it is going to be, it's going to be like a less than 10-minute show every single day for you to get all your Jets news. There's going to be a base Game On show for kind of hockey-wide things, and then one for each Canadian market. Harrison Lee's our host. He's great, and he's going to be giving you Jets news. It's like, man, if I'm on my 15-minute coffee break at work, why not throw on some Game On Winnipeg? Get all the news for the day. Is someone injured? What are the lines at practice? You can only find that. Well, I guess you can find this other places, but it's all going to be in one place with Game On Winnipeg. Now we're going to get into the third period. And this is the part of the show where I just get to kind of talk about whatever I want to. And I want to talk about philosophy. Kind of like what the Jets' philosophy should be kind of going into the next thing. And now I'm no NHL general manager. That's not my job. I just sit here in my basement and talk to you guys. And one thing I want to talk about is sacrificing wins or sacrificing things in October in order to win later, which I think can be kind of a challenge. A big thing in hockey is you do the big rebuild so that you can win later. And there's kind of little things you can do in a season to do that as well. And I think one thing we got to start with is Mark Scheifele. Mark Scheifele is clearly hurt. You can't take a face off. Gabe Vilardi is actually doing really good at that. And maybe that's something he should look at going forward, of him just taking the draw and then Scheifele switching to center after the fact. That's not too bad. But with that, it's like Mark Scheifele, if you're going to be playing through this injury, and one thing that I think Ty speculated on his last show was that maybe he's waiting for Team Canada to make the roster and then he'll go on the shelf for a bit so that he can heal. That makes sense to me. I'm sure he wants to play. He's a big Team Canada guy. And I think he really wants to play for that team, especially since, well, I guess he wouldn't even have made the team, but in 2016, he didn't even have the chance playing against those guys and watching them win in the World Cup of Hockey. But this is Mark Scheifele's probably one of his last chances to be in the Team Canada discussion for best on best. And I think he really wants to make that team, and he has such a good case. I don't think he wants to kind of risk not playing until then. But what I will say is that in 2018, the best season, we talk about 2018 so much in Winnipeg, and it's such a driving force for this fan base to remember where we kind of not came from, but the best of the best, which was 9 games out of 16 to win the Stanley Cup. Context. But that season, I don't know if anyone remembers, Mark Scheifele only played 60 games. He got hurt. He went on the shelf. Blake Wheeler was the first line center. We went like a month with it was like Connor, Blake Wheeler at center, and Jack Roslovic on the wing. Things got wild here for a bit. I think I was working no, never mind. And when we were there and we were watching this unfold, Mark Scheifele was getting better on the shelf. He was getting better on the injured reserve. And through that time, he's healing. Hockey players are probably dealing with multiple injuries all at the same time. They're all dealing with something. But when he came back, he was so much better. And in that season, I don't know if anyone remembers, pretty sure he broke a record for the most goals scored on the road in a playoff run, and he got to the 5th game of the 3rd round. That's kind of ridiculous. And that kind of, they just, maybe it's a coincidence, but it also shows that maybe we don't need to win every game in November. Maybe it's more about winning in April, which is something we really want the Jets to do. And David W. said to my friend Josh's claim about the penalties having supposedly been fairly lopsided, the Jets killed off all of them and scored just 1 goal. That is a fair assessment. You got to score the goals to do something. And they did have a great penalty kill tonight. A lot of that was Connor Hellebuck, which it usually is, but they did kill off all the penalties, so did it really matter? I mean, it did take away a lot of time for the Jets to be in the offensive zone because they were down a man, but it is a fair point. David W. said, I enjoyed the stream and watching another, and he doesn't know if he'll return. He's looking forward to watching another Jets game. Hey, thank you, David W. We love when you're in here. We always appreciate it. Thanks for commenting too. David W. is a very active commenter. I know he's from Ontario, but thank you for watching the Jets, and thank you for watching Game Over Winnipeg. To go back to sacrificing things in November to win in April. This season, we had a huge almost expectation that we were going to get some rookies, which seems like a wild thing to be like, oh, we get rookies for a hockey team. That seems like it should be a pretty regular thing. But we had Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov, who seemed to be ready coming into the season. Especially Chibrikov, I really like as a guy who has all these good skills and habits that seem to play really well into being an NHL player, like leading with his stick into the puck when he goes for a hit, so that even if the guy gets rid of the puck, it goes off his stick, and all these things. Just really good habits that I love to see. But they both get sent down, and when the Jets go on this big run to start the season, it's like, oh yes, they made the right choice. They kept all the vets. They didn't take any risk, and now they're doing so well. They're not doing so well anymore. They were 5-5 coming to this game. They lose again, which a lot of that could be said to fatigue. But at the same time, you're going to this season, you could probably say with a worse roster than last season. You lost Dylan. You lost Monahan. You lost Toffoli. Is Toffoli a loss? That's up for you to decide. You lost Schmidt. You had a third pair that was dominant last year of Schmidt and Sandberg. And then with that, did you replace them with anyone? Not really. You lost Brossoit, but Comrie's been awesome. And with that, it's like, okay, we know we're probably getting a second line center. We know Shelby Leoff is probably getting a second line center. Could we have maybe lost some more games earlier, had Brad Lambert kind of grow into the second line center, and then kind of had a second line center going to the playoffs so that we could maybe address the defense with our first round pick? Because we don't have any defensive prospect who's ready to take that on. Who knows? Maybe Brad Lambert wasn't ready either way, and he definitely didn't look too ready out of training camp. He looked like he needed something, but how much is he going to learn being down there compared to playing in the NHL? Does that second line center for the Jets, is that a place where you can really learn? Because Adam Lowry takes up the hardest matchups. The Scheifele lineup takes the second hardest matchups. The second/third line of whoever Nikolai Ehlers is playing with that night. Is that soft enough for him to learn those lessons? Maybe, maybe not, but maybe it was worth more of a shot, especially when you had the roster spots from Heinola and Logan Stanley getting injured out of training camp. And the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to sacrificing things in November so that you can win in April is the Jets' current schedule. They had a tough schedule. They went on a 6-game road trip after 1 game at home, but after a 3-game road trip on the Eastern Conference. In the Eastern Conference, they've been back and forth across the country like 3 times. And what happens when you have a 1 game at home in the middle of 2 road trips is that's not really a home game. You're really just stopping, sleeping in your own bed for a night, getting up and going. You're barely unpacking. And I think what you're seeing here is like, okay, we have this really tough schedule. Let's get that out of the way. The Jets have such a breezy January where they're here like the whole month. And I think that like, okay, let's get this out of the way. They look hurt. They look tired. They looked exhausted. They got to regroup because we got, oh my gosh, 57 more of these things? And I'm glad that we got it out of the way here instead of in March or April ramping up to the playoffs. And it's nice to say that we got this little stretch out of the way, which is like a quarter of our home games or a quarter of our road games in a stretch of 20 days. Kind of absolutely wild. And that's where I'll leave that. Like, I mean, there's lots of things you can do to kind of sacrifice things early to get to the end of the season, going on the injured reserves, playing rookies, and maybe those things can be combined. Maybe Mark Scheifele takes a few weeks off so that Brad Lambert can get some games in. Who knows? Chibrikov for a guy who might be hurting a little too. I'm not sure who else kind of looks hurt. Nemestikov for a while there was getting bullied a lot. Dylan DeMello seems like he has something going on, but that's hockey. These guys are all dealing with something probably. And as we kind of get into the overtime period, this is the part of the game where you can ask anything. A lot of these questions right now in the chat have been on topic. This is your chance to go completely off topic, talk about anything you would like to speak about while so you can start typing those away. Any questions you have for me. It can be about hockey, it can be about the Jets, it can be about anything else. But let's talk about our Game Overs merch. And what better way to support this show other than liking and subscribing, which is free and easy, than rocking some of our sick clothing. If you're a big fan of the show, we have very cool merch. We have a hoodie. I got one of the hoodies. Look at this hoodie right here. It's fantastic. We have a QR code for you to check this stuff out. We have mugs. I have one right here. We have the mug right here. My buddy Fife talking about how tall is Logan Stanley. Logan Stanley tall at a solid 6'7". He is like 6'10" on skates. And with all of these beautiful designs we have, they're all available on our Game Over site. We have more things like this. We have like dog bandanas too. I should get my dog James Bond a beautiful dog bandana of the Game Over network, so that when he's out there barking at all of our guests, they'll at least look at this beautiful piece of merch that he's wearing and be very excited to share their love of Game Over Winnipeg. They're all designed by Brady Chalice of our Game Over Winnipeg. Use the QR code on stream right now and take a look through our apparel store and help us rebuild local sports media in Canada while repping your community. All right. Let's see if we have any questions. If not, we'll wrap up the show. We've been going for like 45 minutes. Pretty solid. Yeah, so Fife, how tall is Logan Stanley? He is 6'7". He's a very, very tall man. We are the same age. He's like 8 inches taller than me. I'm like a 5'11 and a half. When my doctor told me I was 5'11 and a half, I was like, can we round that up? And he said, I'm not a liar, which was unfortunate. Anything else? What else can we talk about? Logan Stanley was made when they traded for Logan Stanley, when they traded a first and a second, I believe it was a guy named Garamov and Pascal Laberge is who the Flyers took. And the Winnipeg Jets took, because it was not just the pick for Logan Stanley, they also got a third-round pick, and with that, they took Luke Green. Luke Green looked really good for a long time. He was just hurt all the time. I think he won OHL Defenseman of the Year or QMJHL Defenseman of the Year one year when he was playing in the Q. He was a good prospect for a little while. He was just such a Band-Aid. It was very unfortunate, but he looked like he might have been a Jet if not for those injuries. His sticks were pretty good. I played against sports here in Winnipeg on St. Anne's. If you're a right-handed guy, like my buddy Fife is, he has a few of them. All right. Doesn't seem like we're having any more questions after we have some really niche Winnipeg Jets draft trivia. From all of us at Game Over Winnipeg, which is basically me and Ty. Thank you for watching this show. Our next show is on Tuesday. It will be me again, and the Jets are playing the St. Louis Blues. They're back in Winnipeg. They're sleeping in their own beds. They should be a little faster, have a little bit more in them to kind of go in on another Central Division matchup. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, I've been Brendan Labarre. This has been Game Over Winnipeg, and thank you again for watching. We will see you on Tuesday. Farewell.